emotional health issues with the students, and as well as with parents also, because even grown-ups have certain issues related to this, because we can't move out, we can't be, and then there are a lot of expectations from educationists. Parents are expecting a lot about from their children being at home. So I find as the time is passing by, instead of finding some more productive outcomes, the outcomes which are coming of this time is now has to take a different we all have to take a different perspective of it. I personally feel that, you
I
know
so agree, ma'am. We are seeing three broad, I wouldn't call them challenges, but three broad directions. The first is very interestingly, and this is related to college students, that by the time they hit the morning, their data for online classes is over because they've spent the night on PUBG and Netflix. So that's very interesting that I picked up Vivek, which I never guessed. So they're becoming nocturnal. I think the second area also is uh, mothers are finding it difficult because they have to start going to work, but schools are not open. So what do they do with the kids? So we've actually started a crash now at the university. So we said, okay, we'll provide you that facility. And of course, mental health of students. I think it's getting, again, in a university environment, Anuja ma'am, much more difficult for new students, our new batch which is joining. I think that's because they don't have to connect with the place. I think that's going to be a big challenge. Older ones are still okay. So we are learning, I think, all of us. Hopefully, Corona will go away. It's 4:01, Vivek. If you allow me, should we start, Anuja, ma'am, Vivek?
yes, sir.
Let's go ahead.
Fantastic. So, good afternoon, good evening, dear teachers. It's my honor to be here today. My name is Atul Khosla. I am the founder and Pro-Vice Chancellor of Shulini University, Kasole Hills, Himachal Pradesh. Vivek, Atray, and I today are going to be talking about the new education policy. We'll talk about the philosophy behind it, the key principles of the policy, salient features, and also how do we think the policy will impact you. So we'll speak for around 30-35 minutes, and we'll then request lots of questions from you. And at that point of time, I'll request Anuja ma'am also to join us. And if Sandhya ma'am is there also to join us, so we can share our views and get into a debate which is fruitful to all of us. Good afternoon, Sandhya ma'am. Good afternoon. We'll appreciate if you can now please mute yourself. With me today is Mr. Vivek Atray, a very noted and very famous motivational speaker, author, TEDx speaker, ex-IS officer, and also, as I call him, the architect behind, the brain behind the ID Park of Chandigarh, an author of three books, the latest being Finding Success Within. Vivek has been in education for a long time. He was also the director of school education for Haryana. And Vivek, of course, is a teacher now. He is a visiting professor at Shulini. And of course, Vivek is teaching all over the place, including Missouri. Can I request someone to please mute Sandhya ma'am? Shikha, could you please do that? Okay, quickly, my name is Atul Khosla. I am the founder and pro-vice chancellor of Shulini. Like I said, I'm a BTech from IIT Kanpur and then did my MBA, spent many, many years in the industry in consulting. I've had a very strong interest in education, Vivek. So even when I was consulting, I worked very closely with the Prime Minister's office way back in 2000, shaping the policy for engineering education in the country with Brajesh Mishra, who was the cabinet secretary at that point of time. We're also closely linked with the new education policy. Dr. Dinesh Singh, who is one of the members of the new education policy, the Kasturi Rangan Committee. He is an advisor and a member of the Shulini board and also a professor here, ex-vice chancellor of Delhi University. So we've heard lots of interesting perspectives from Dinesh. So I'm going to also talk about how Dinesh thinks and what was the philosophy behind the new education policy. The format for the day would be Vivek speaking for a while, and I will come in, share a more detailed presentation with you. But before we start, we are going to request Anuja ma'am to please open the day.
Okay. Yeah, good afternoon, and I'm grateful that I am amongst educated people who are intellectually motivating us to appreciate and analyze the latest education policy. And this policy is very close to my heart because I have been always looking at an education as a competency based education, right? So whatever the latest changes CBSE has made, they have very successfully been able to incorporate those competencies and skill development for students at as early as at age of the early adolescence of class 6. And then, since the adolescence age has been preponed, I should be saying biologically all over the world. So probably by class 9, almost 2 years ahead, the students have to make a choice for their career options, and within 2 years they shall be able to identify whether they are I mean, going to major in that particular subject or not. So especially the universalization of education and the extension of primary classes, till a certain age, is most welcoming, because I feel the joy of learning in a joyful way at an early age was the importance has never been realized it earlier, because the more children do it in experiential learning at an early age, they are able to explore and understand the things better. And then in the later stage of their lives, then they can go in for their CCT part, the critical and creative thinking can be developed. So I am in for the latest policies as far as the highlights are concerned, Atul. Thank you.
Thank you, Anuja ma'am. I think we will now hand it over to Vivek. Vivek, what I also love to hear from you would be, apart from what the policy states, as an ex-IS officer, your thoughts around implementation. How long would it take? What's really coming in for us? And also, any negatives, any things that the policy needs to improve on. So over to you, Vivek Atray.
Thank you, Atul Khosla, and thank you, Anuja ma'am, for that welcome. Once again, a pleasure to be here at Ideas That Matter, which is our series of webinars. And we have already interacted with you, Anuja ma'am, and your team, and that day with Professor Jeevan as well. So wonderful to have done that and back again with you today. And also happy to be joined by two other principals and other school teachers. Wonderful that they are part of this session. So as you know, Atul Khosla and I have been speaking on various topics, and one of the topics that we speak on is the new education policy. And it is, I think, out of 6 or 7 topics that we speak on, this is probably the most relevant and current one, which has just come out. And it is something very important. So as Atul said, I've been director of school education and I've been director of technical education in Chandigarh also. So it is something that I have seen over the years that government comes up with, if not policies all the time, but definitely new ideas, new schemes, new programs and projects and notifications. So it is always welcome that government has been thinking on these lines of improvement, and the panel of experts obviously gives a lot of thought to what is being done. Nobody announces a policy without lots of care and thinking and detailed analysis. But what happens is that implementation is the key. And policy and implementation is like, it's two different things, two different matters. Making a policy and implementing a policy require two different skill sets. If we ask the policy planners to come and implement the policy at the school level, I'm afraid they won't be able to do it, because the principal and the teachers know how to do that at the ground level. If you ask the state level or the district level education officer to do it, he might or she might be able to do a better job. So the thinkers and the planners and the policy makers are up in the Delhi echelons, and they are far removed from reality usually. But luckily, in this case, a lot of educationists have been associated with the new education policy. And it's not only the ministers or the officers who have framed it. And as Atul said, one of our advisors, I think Professor Dinesh Singh, if I can name, has been part of that. So it's wonderful to be knowing that he was a part of this, because he's a distinguished and extremely right-thinking gentleman with great flair and intelligence. So let me say that a new policy and its implementation are totally different aspects of life. The implementation will depend a lot on ground level realities. Some points will be implemented quicker than others, and some may never be implemented. Let me also say that, because many things are not implementable. Of course, in this policy, there are quite many practical, innovative things. One of the things that we've been talking about, and if I can, I think Professor Jeevan came up with a quote that day, that instead of scolding the child, we should be molding the child. I remember this quote. He used this word, and definitely I am all for that. It is basically the creative nature of the child, which is the key to development and education of a child. What happens in our previous education system, and in some cases it is really sad, that 11th class, 12th class schooling is not taken seriously at all in the school. And all the students are just getting admission for the purpose of getting into competitive exams. And the school really doesn't matter. And many schools have allowed that. So this kind of thing has been the bane of our system. And the kind of rote learning and the cramming which has been there is also a bane of the system. I still remember having crammed something in history in class 6 or 7, and I can still relate all those 12 states or 16 states of that historical period because of that ratta, if I may call it. It still resonates in my mind. I'm not going to try it right now, but I can do it. The point is that the brain works in different ways, and we are all human beings. The new policy, it seems, is encouraging creativity to some extent. So that is something good. It is also encouraging flexibility to some extent, which is also very good. Because suddenly in class, let's say class 8 or class 9 or class 10, a child is under pressure. Then what are you going to select in your stream? What are you going to do now? And the child doesn't know. Most children don't really know what they're good at and what they really love to do. At that stage, it's not clear. Even after college, sometimes journeys ahead are not clear. Many people end up becoming media persons, although they tried to get into the IAS. Many people who are IAS officers like me, they resign and become motivational speakers. Life is not very clear. And it is very important for the system to be flexible. What do we need to do? We need to ground them. We need to give them the basics. The basics as well as that creative thinking ability. So if I talk about 4 or 5 features of the new education policy before Atul comes in with his PPT, these are good, welcome changes. The first one is the number of years. So initially it was seeming something different, but if you look at it, now formal schooling is going to start at the age of 3. At the age of 3. So the age of 3 to 5 is that pre-primary kind of stage, which has now been formalized. Earlier it was starting at the age of 6, and that was something that was different. Now it is from 3 to 8, and then from 8 to 11, and 11 to 14, and 14 to 18. These age brackets are there. And in these age brackets, they have clearly segregated the level of learning that is required, the level of understanding, the level of teaching that is required, and probably the level of teachers. And the qualifications of teachers may also be very clearly demarcated in that respect. In the school level also, there is a move to make a lot of learning in the mother tongue. Now, this is something which may have scared a few people. And up to class 5, if learning in, let's say, the subjects of history or whatever class 5 students have started with social studies, science, if it is in Hindi medium, it is said by experts across the world that learning in your own language, mother tongue, is easier. You understand concepts better. And understanding concepts is obviously important for education systems. But what happens is that schools across India have been teaching these subjects, a large number of them, in English. It is heartening to note in the policy that it is not going to be compulsory for this to take place. It is not going to be compulsory, as I see in the policy, that schools switch over from English medium teaching at the primary level to Hindi medium. Those Hindi medium schools or regional language schools which exist already will obviously continue in that manner. But English schools will not have to change their system in that respect. So that is something very heartening. And of course, it is good to train those children who are not going to English schools and are going to Hindi schools. It's good to encourage them to learn the basic subjects in their own language. That is great. So our own language, in fact, it is often embarrassing to see that somebody can write English but not the mother tongue. And even you or I, people who are in higher education, might find that it is easier to write in English than in our own mother. I often feel embarrassed if I don't know a Hindi word at this stage. But luckily, I've been in the government, and the government teaches you a lot of Hindi. The government makes you practice in languages, so I can understand and appreciate my mother tongue a little more. But it is important that mother tongue is a part of our life, and we are as good or better in our mother tongue than we are at any other language. So English will definitely stay. English will definitely be important. And in fact, if you look at it, I have been director of IT. The skill sets required by the industry include communication skills in English, because English is a universal global language. And India had an edge in IT and in IT related services because English was part of our curriculum so deeply. And China or other countries which never had English could not keep up pace with the IT revolution as India did right from 2000 when the Y2K bug was supposed to destroy the world, but it didn't. So anyway, coming to the rest of the features, in higher education, you will have realized that many of the bachelor's degrees will now be 4 years degrees. Instead of 3 years degrees, there will be 4-year degrees. And these 4-year degrees will be commensurate with the rest of the world, the Western world and the advanced world, developed world. So students from India who are going abroad after their 4-year degree of graduation will not find it difficult to get admission anywhere. Many schools or colleges or universities were not giving admission to Indians because they had done a 3-year BA. So that is something which will also change. Plus, Shulini University had already implemented something which has come in now in the policy, which will be implemented elsewhere, which is flexi degrees. And you will also have the opportunity to study a minor subject or 2 minor subjects, where if you are studying chemical engineering, you can also take a course in music and one in, let's say, philosophy. Now, you might think that chemical engineering, music, and philosophy are totally disparate and distinct kinds of streams. But it is my view, and probably the view of the educationists who have framed the policy, that to make complete human beings understanding of other types of people and courses and jobs and countries, it is important to make people multi-dimensional. And Atul has rightly said that many of the inputs that are there in the new education policy were already part of the ethos of Shulini University, which is, of course, one of the most forward-looking universities. And Atul will hopefully tell you how highly ranked Shulini University is in the latest Atal rankings, which have been announced by the government of India. But I also have been talking on multidimensionalism as opposed to unidimensionalism, which means that we cannot be automatons thinking only in one direction as human beings. So children who are growing up in our education system, they need to be all-rounders, they need to be complete personalities, and therefore this new step is also very welcome. Another couple of things in the education policy is going to be streamlining of the bodies. That means the educational boards and corporations and commissions like UGC and AICTE. They are going to be merged, and hopefully there will be only one body at the education, higher education level, and one at the school education level, which will take care of all affiliations, etc., etc. That will be streamlining a lot of things which were otherwise going haywire because of various things. And a lot of flexibility has been left to the state governments, which is true, which is correct, which should be done. The state governments take decisions in these respects in many cases. So Chandigarh administration in your case, in Punjab government in the other case of the schools, in the other schools, will have a lot of leeway and flexibility to go in for these things. I think one emphasis which is also a little bit maybe should have been overemphasized or extra emphasized in this is the level of teaching skills required. So in an education policy, we have to see to it that who is teaching the students. Are they people who are the best of the best? They wanted to be teachers, they aspired to be teachers, or are they those who could not get a job in some other place and they have come into teaching as a result? So their interest levels or their capability levels would not be that superior. So one of the things that could have been emphasized a little more in the education policy is the kinds of training for teachers. Although there is a new program in BA in education which has been introduced, but I think a little more professionalism in the training of teachers needs to be there in all levels, in school level, in primary, pre-primary, and senior secondary, and higher education and technical education also. I think I'll stop here for a while and I'll invite Atul Khosla to come in with his presentation. And let me just say that let us not be scared of this policy, but I'll come back with more ideas and inputs later. Atul. Atul, we can't hear you.
Oh, I was muted. Can
Now
you hear
you're
me?
okay. Now you're okay. Yeah, yeah.
So I was saying it's such a pleasure listening to you, Vivek, and I'm so inspired by you that today I'm innovating the way I talk. So I'm standing today rather than sitting. So
Thank
hopefully,
you.
good job. So talking about the new education policy, I think the point that you and I have been emphasizing, Vivek, is about the fact that knowledge is not going to be a premium resource anymore. So in our days when you and I were growing up, and possibly Nuja ma'am, we had knowledge and we correlated knowledge to success. Knowledge today is getting created inside the computer. We've got artificial intelligence, and the computer can pretty much solve everything. So I'm so glad that the government came up with a new policy that says we will not emphasize on remembering, but we'll emphasize on analyzing and creating, which is also the higher part of the Bloom's taxonomy that many of you might be aware of in terms of how you get learning into students. So I think that's one very important point. The second point I'd like to make, Vivek, is going back into history. So if you look at the history of India, and I'm going to go back around 1,000 odd years, India was actually a very progressive and a very impressive country. Around 25% of India's or the world's GDP actually was in India. So India contributed to 25% of the world's GDP. India was the knowledge economy of the world at that point of time. And some amazing stuff happened around that point of time. Whatever the reasons being, our institutions of higher education got distorted, they got actually destroyed. Our universities got destroyed. And our school education system, the Gurukul system, sort of again got distorted. So, what happened when the Industrial Revolution struck? While Europe was prospering, India completely missed the huge revolution that was taking place. And that was the Industrial Revolution, and the rest is history. We ended up becoming one of the poorest countries of the world. The point I'm trying to drive over here, Anuja ma'am and Vivek, is that education is actually the most critical when it comes to developing an economy. Yes, we talk about jobs, we talk about make in India, but make in India is not going to make India a great country. It'll make us just the factory of the world. What will make India a great country is going to be becoming the knowledge country of the world. Let's look at the United States of America. And this is history again, Vivek. In the early 1900s or the early part of the 20th century, Europe ruled the world. America was not out there. You know what they did, teachers? They went out and brought the best minds of the world into the United States of America. And luckily for them, the best minds in Europe were the Jews. And Germany was out there going out and punishing the Jews, and they all migrated to the United States of America. And America became a great nation. They invested during the World War II majorly into education, primary education, school education, and of course, university education. The Harvard, the Yales, the Cambridges of the world are a product of the Second World War. And I think that's the point of inflection, Vivek, we are sitting in today. China has done that 20 years back. Many of you might not know, but 20 of the top 100 universities of the world today are either from Hong Kong or China. It's absolutely smashing what they've done in the higher education space, including primary and school education. So I'm so glad the government came up with this. 6% of spend in education is humongous, from 2% to 6%. It could be an exponential change in terms of how education is run. But more importantly, for us teachers, I think it's going to be great because there'll be more opportunities for us. So imagine many, many more schools coming up. Government spending will go up in education. So more and more government schools. Hopefully, this time these government schools will be better schools than what we've seen in the past and better universities than what we've seen in the past. I think it's going to be a little bit of a challenge in the near term when it comes to employability for schools like yours or universities like ours because there'll be more options to teachers. So we also have to have strong people policies to ensure that we can retain our teachers and retain the best teachers more importantly. Uh, there's going to be more flexible education, both at the school level and at the university level, which means if we are teachers who are not ready to innovate, if you're teachers who are not ready to learn, then we'll have challenges. So I think all of us will be pushed to the frontier. A small example is the new education policy is saying up to grade five, uh, education will be in the form of either a regional language or a mother tongue or the home language as they define it, which means the traditional way of teaching in English might just go away. So we'll have to, I think, relearn. Students will have to relearn how they learn, and so will teachers, how they sort of teach in home languages. A big, big, big change. Of course, you've heard about the 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 system. So the first 5 years are what they call foundation. Foundation means no textbooks, no pastas anymore, no exams. And I have to tell a small story over here, Anuja ma'am and Vivek. I did my primary education at Oxford. My father was doing his PhD there. So I studied nursery and KG at Oxford. My elder brother, who was 1 year elder to me, did KG and first at Oxford. In nursery and KG in those days, they did not teach how to read and write. So when I came back to India, and I still remember I joined a school called Christ High School, I think Sector 8 in Chandigarh, Vivek. Okay. I was put through a test and I knew nothing because I could speak great English, but I knew no alphabet and I knew no number. So I was demoted to nursery. And my elder brother, who had actually done 1 year of formal learning the alphabet, and he could also speak the language because he came from England, was promoted by 1 year. And that was the sort of irony of education in India, where I speak to small kids over here nowadays, kids of my faculty, small kids, fourth standard kid. A faculty member came to me and said, "Sir, chutti chahiye." I said, "Why?" "Sir, bachche ka exam hai." So 4-year-old kid, and the faculty has to take chutti because exam hai. और कितना homework मिलता है उनको आजकल आप सोच नहीं सकते. So all this has to change. So, and the new education policy is pushing that. And I know schools like yours wouldn't have this issue, ma'am, but most schools in India have this challenge. So they're going towards discovery-led learning, which is what the new education policy says, learning by doing with hand. The second stage of 3 years, which is grade 3, 4, 5, is the preparatory stage. And this is where they'll introduce the concept of literacy and numeracy. So the big change in terms of output, Vivek, of the new education policy is the concept of numeracy. So we always spoke about literacy. Now we're saying, are our children, are they aware about numbers? Can they add numbers, subtract, multiply, etc.? So numeracy is becoming a big challenge. Now, don't mind it, Anuja ma'am, but I work with lots and lots of students from across the country who come for university education. And sometimes I joke that they've gone through 15 years of educational abuse. And it's not true for your school, but it's true for many, many other schools. They can't write straight. They can't write and comprehend two sentences. And when it comes to mathematics, oh God, I don't think they can do even 2 into 2. And that's a very, very big challenge. They'll come to university expecting great placements. and they'll take, let's say, admission in computer science.
Sure.
And imagine, I mean, here are students wanting to become computer scientists, but don't know the basics. So hopefully that will change. So I'm very excited about it. So middle age is when they'll be learning through experiential learning, and there'll be some introduction to basic concepts. So that's grade 3, 4, 5. Middle stage is going to be 6, 7, 8, where there's going to be an introduction to formal subjects. There's going to be an introduction to basics of English, mathematics, sciences. Secondary stage is where it's going to be multidisciplinary. Most importantly, there will be no separation between arts and sciences. So again, I don't know whether teachers, if you are studying in the United States of America, you could do a degree in BA, in liberal arts, for example, in English, and still become a doctor. That's the flexibility of the system that they have. And everyone pretty much studies sciences and arts up to standard 12. And I'm so glad that that's really what the new education policy is talking about. I don't know in the near term what they're going to do. Hopefully, there will be a transition time. But the JEE and NEET are going to go away, Vivek. So that's great news for me. And I'll tell you another great anecdote over here in a second. But I believe we are destroying the youth of India by sending them to quota in the most primary adolescent ages of their lives, right? 11th and 12th, they're going out and I don't know what they do over there, because that's the time that the mind should be curious. That's the time when we should be pushing our kids to be adventurous, become creative. And here we are sending them to quota to become, learning how to crack the JEE, for example. So I think that's going to change. There's a power that's gone over here, Vivek. So if I drop off, then please pick it over. So I think school education, like I said, will become flexible, great stuff happening, but the biggest changes are in higher education. And I'll go through a few of them. Education will be flexible in 4 different dimensions. First is students drop out, as we know. So they could drop out in the first year, second year, third year, fourth year. So every year that they drop out, they could get some certificate in the hand. So if they've done 1 year of university education, Vivek, they'll get a certificate. 2 years, they'll get a diploma. 3 years, they'll get a degree. And 4 years, they'll get a research degree. If they've done a 4-year program, they will do their PG in 1 year. So the master's will be a 1-year program and not a 2-year program. So all you teachers who have done more than 4 years of undergrad, because you've done a B.Ed and you've done your undergrad, you can now do your PG if you're not a PG in 1 year. So go out and get your master's degree. I think in the next couple of years, you got 1 year less. So big change on there. There's going to be a national credit bank, which basically means after 1 year, your credits that you've gained will go to a bank. It's like a digi locker, and you can exercise that whenever you want. It's your money, it's your knowledge. So this, when you come back to university, if you want to, luckily my power is back. So my systems are working, Vivek, at the university. We didn't, oh, it went back again. It went dropped off again. Sorry for this. Okay. So the National Credit Bank is where I could think about a system where you say Shulini is really good for the creative side of the mind, sciences and biotechnology. So I could do 6 months at Shulini, and my credits of Shulini will go to the National Credit Bank. Then I say as a student, I'll do the next 6 months in Punjab University, the next 6 months in Delhi University, and for the next 6 months, I'll fly over to the United States and then come back and I'll complete my degree at Shulini. That's not doable in a formal way through the National Credit Bank. And credits from one university will be transferable to another university, which were not there earlier. I think that's a phenomenal change, Vivek, because dropouts will have an opportunity and the flexibility will happen. I think the second thing is the concept of majors and minors, which Vivek said. So we started this concept around 4 years ago. So you could be doing, for example, a degree in computer science and a minor in music or a minor in literature or anything that you feel like that the university offers. And that's just going to bring in more creativity into students, I believe. I think the average ones will struggle, Vivek. They will find it a little difficult, but I think it's still a great change. So what is the government pushing for? I think the government is really pushing for what they call 100% gross enrollment ratio in schools, or GER, and 50% gross enrollment ratio in universities, which means 50% of our population should have a college degree. Uh, so I think then there are regulatory issues which have changed. So I won't get into that. I think a couple of things which are very, very important is one is the National Education Technology Forum, which is being created. So we're all struggling with technology. So the government is going to pump lots and lots of money to create a uniform technology across schools and universities. It's going to be in regional languages also, so it's going to be helpful for schools and universities. They're going to allow foreign universities into India. So the top 100 foreign universities can set up campuses in the country. I think it's great for universities like ours because suddenly we'll have a real competition.
Yes.
We will have to compete with them to sustain ourselves. And I love that. I'm very competitive, Anuja, ma'am, Vivek. So we think they asked me what's going to happen. I was speaking to a friend of mine. He said, how are you going to now? This guy is at Harvard, and he called me and said, we might be coming to India. I joked and said, I'll see you in Kurukshetra or Panipat, whatever. Anyway, so I think these are big, big, big changes that will happen. Hopefully, there'll be great changes, more money coming into education. There's still a conflict, Vivek, between fees and salary. And I know this question and debate keeps coming all the time. And I hope the government will solve this because at one level, as a private institution, my fees are capped. So the government says you can't charge more than this, but I would expect you to give UGC scales, and they are completely not synchronous with each other. In education, which I'm sure in terms of schools, they also want teacher-taught ratios to be maintained as per the regulator. So the whole model, hopefully, some regulator will look into it and they'll sort of say that okay, private education has to drive the future of India, whether it's university or schools. And hopefully they'll also look at the economic model because while we don't make money, we are not for profit, we can't go into losses, right? I mean, we also have to meet the costs that are there. I'm not complaining over here, but I'm just saying that hopefully the regulators and the people, the policymakers will think about it. Two more thoughts before I hand it back to you, Vivek. The first is, like I said, your students who are now in the 11th and 12th might not have the JEE or NEET. So there is a case for a common exam which will be more aptitude and language based like the SAT. And I think that's going to be challenging, and hopefully the transparency comes through because I was speaking to a class of 12th at one of the schools in Himachal, and kids got really nervous because they're now asking, should I prepare for JEE or not? I mean, we know JEE takes 2 years of preparation, right? It's a tough exam. So I, of course, told them that you were there, Vivek, right? Uh,
Yeah.
St. Mary's, Kasoli. And I think that's something, hopefully, that the regulator tells, hopefully, in advance what's going to happen. And I think one more thing which I'd like to bring about in terms of regulation over here, ma'am, is there's going to be a new regulator called the State School Students Authority. So you will be under the State School Student Authority. Your regulation is going to be more self-declaration. I think that's another big one. So we will be expected to put data on the website. So there's going to be self-declaration. And so the website will have to be more robust with all the information there as per the directions of the government. So hopefully less inspections. I don't know as of now, but I would assume hopefully less inspections and hopefully more what we call policy driven regulation rather than inspection driven regulation. So I'll close it by one small anecdote, Vivek. Nandan Nilekani is a very dear friend. As you all know, he's one of the founders of Infosys, and he's an ex-ID Bombay graduate. So I've known him for the last 15 years, and all his life he's complained about the JEE. He's always maintained that quota is killing the brilliance of India. He's always fought for that. So the other day I was meeting Nandan, and I was joking with him. I said, "All your life you fought against coaching institutes, but you should know that every second day." every second day, some company reaches out to me and says, I will coach your students on how to crack the Infosys exam. So I think we all need coaching. I know that, but hopefully we can make our exams more open book. We can make them more learning driven and
Yeah.
less routine driven. So Delhi University, ma'am, has done some amazing things. They're doing examinations right now, and their exams are going to be open exam. 1 hour for downloading and uploading the answer sheet, and 2 hours of an open exam. I think brilliant, Vivek. They've solved the problem in an absolutely brilliant way. Hopefully they'll put the questions in the right way that you can Google the answers of those questions. So open exam is very tough both for the examiners, the teachers, and also for the students. So hopefully they'll be able to pull it off, and that's what we need in this country, Vivek, to make it great. So hopefully this is the start of a great nation, not just a new education policy. Hopefully we will become we will become the world's number one country soon. Vivek, over to you.
Thank you very much, Atul. Very good speech, actually. Wonderful words and good thoughts, and well said. So I think, Anujaji, just before we have an interaction, I'll come up with a few more ideas and thoughts on this. So Atul rightly said, firstly, we have to accept change. And schools at their level don't really have anything to worry about with the new policy. It is the implementation by the government, by the administrators, by the bureaucracy, by the chairman of your institutions, for example, who will really have to implement things pan India or wherever they are. At the school level, there will be very little change in terms of your or the teacher's roles. Teaching will obviously have to be of high quality, and that it should be always. And in a classroom situation, when we go back to the classroom, I don't think there is going to be that much of a change in the class atmosphere or in the way the class is conducted. So the policy is not impacted in these kinds of things. Of course, digital learning is a very much a key part of the new policy, and all teachers who have now been through this lockdown, they have all become experts by force or by default because of the online classes. And whatever they didn't know earlier or they didn't have any idea, they have now got an idea. I have seen a great deal of improvement in the interactions that I have had with schools online, mainly through this program. For example, when we started out, I would see a couple of speakers from schools not comfortable with technology, not able to speak in the way they should. Perhaps the camera was right in their face also, could not really, be comfortable. Now I find everybody's or most people are at ease. They have realized the way in which a setup should be, the speech should be, the headphones or whatever they need. I think they have got the latest equipment or whatever the internet connections have improved. So people have adapted, and people have also adapted to the change that is required by the digital era. Of course, blended learning is going to be here to stay, and the policy also encourages it. Blended learning includes not only classroom teaching, but also online classes. And when we go back to the classroom, then obviously many things will be, hopefully, in the new era, it will be very much like it used to be for us in childhood. Some things don't change. The games, the little teasing, and the little, maybe the teacher, one of the teachers I saw on WhatsApp gave a message that, I miss throwing a little chalk at one of the naughty students. So, I mean, that kind of thing you can't do in an online situation. You can probably send an emoji, which is a red face. That's all you can do. But the point is that we have to learn to live with it. And in the policy terms, I'll give you one example or one little story as to how policy planners think. So there was Mr. Vittal. Mr. N. Vittal was the CVC of India at one point, and he was the principal secretary or secretary government of India education. So he says that, there was a story, policy planners and implementers. He said there was a monkey and a dog and a cat. So he says the monkey was sitting on top of the wall and the dog was chasing the cat. And the cat went complaining to the monkey that this dog keeps on chasing me. So the monkey gives very sane advice. The monkey says to the cat, okay, if he keeps troubling you, then why don't you also become a dog? So then the dog will stop chasing you. So the cat goes away and comes back later, scratching its head with its paws. But Mr. Monkey, how do I become a dog? So the monkey says, my job was to tell you the policy, your job is to implement it. Not to be
Very
taken very
nice.
seriously, but this is something that Mr. Vittal related to us officers in a meeting. So the point being that the policy implementation is the key, and all the good intentions in the world will not matter if we are not at the ground level making that change happen in the classroom and with the life of the child who is growing up, who's learning, who's being educated. That is what really matters. So, with the new policy, we should have youngsters coming out of schools and colleges who are more capable, smarter, with complete personalities than those who are coming out today. Of course, you must have seen that children are much more intelligent already than we used to be in our times, and that is a basic evolutionary trait. But the education system has to contribute to their development. These are my thoughts, and I think Atul will invite you now, Anuja ji, for an interaction.
Absolutely. Thank you, Vivek, and thank you, Anuja ma'am. The whole I would say summary of the whole new education policy, Vivek, is about creativity. It's about bringing creativity into education, igniting the young minds, and making sure that they become world beaters. Uh, I was just thinking about showing one small video about some amazing work that some of our students did, and it's a very simple idea, but I wanted to share that because I think if consistently students can do this type of work, India will be an amazing place to be. So it's about uh, cooking in a chula, as you all know, creates a lot of fire. So I won't take the suspense away, but let me show you this video. So this is a patent that our students have, and this could probably change the way uh, cooking is done in India. Here it is. Hopefully this is what the new education policy will do. And it's not just about high tech, it's about picking up simple ideas and implementing them with creativity. So that's from my end, and I would love to hear questions from the teachers. So would love to, if you could ask questions, but I'll at this juncture also invite Anuja ma'am into the discussion. So your thoughts, ma'am. I mean, you are such a noted educationist yourself. I'm sure you have lots and lots of opinions and thoughts about what's really going to happen.
Atulji and Vivek sir, it has been, I mean, giving a new leash to my school education on which I work in a larger percentage as compared to you. But of course, the chula thing has really, given an insight, and I think I need to visit where this chula is and get one for myself and for at least my students in the school, because we are doing some pottery work, so we can, make our children cook some food in these pots, earthen pots, and do it. It's very beautiful. I must congratulate you, because every time I interact and see what Shalini University is doing, I feel so attracted to visit the university, and one day I shall surely, as soon as this COVID-19 situation is better and has improved. And as Atray sir has just said about the education policy also, that it's not about the policy being created. It's more about what story he said. It's about the execution part. How deeply we study that, and how emotionally we get involved with it, and practically we implement it, will bring the true content imbibed in this education policy. I strongly believe in experiential learning and learning by doing. But somehow, till now, in our at an early education stage, the grade points for this kind of learning has really not been appreciative. They have been there. They have been being introduced through the CC pattern, and then it was withdrawn. And now still children further think, that the rote learning can still take place. But for sure, the challenges are going to be faced by the existing teachers as well, because the educationists are really not trained to create such kind of questions, because they say that a true education is an art of questioning. So if children are able to question the right thing in the content, 90% of education is achieved, or understanding of the concept is achieved. So same thing goes, building up building up question papers, as you quoted. I think Atulji only quoted about Delhi University. It's all about how you assess. Are we really assessing children, or we are evaluating them? So I think there's a paradigm shift from just evaluating children, but it is more about assessment. Block wise block, the building has to be done. So all the best to all of us. I would say Atray sir is also a great educationist, a visionary, and shows a creative path to so many educationists and students as well. And Atulji is actually an implementer. I saw a beautiful video of university, and I can see, I've met a few students from the university. So I know how you are teaching there. So I think my compliments to both of you, and it's always wonderful interacting with you. So Madam Sir, Sandhya is also there. If Sandhya ma'am, you want to add something, you can add. Sandhya Diwan ma'am is from Cambridge International School, Nakoda, and she has been a colleague in one of the schools. So I think we can leave the stage open for our teachers for further discussions. Atulji and sir, thank you so much.
Thank you. Sandhya ma'am, if you could unmute and play your video, then we can request you for your thoughts. So till I think questions come in, and Sandhya ma'am is I think there. Sandhya ma'am, can we have your camera on? Okay, I think technology, that's what it does. Looks like a challenge.
Yeah.
Vivek, from a implementation perspective, and both Anuja ma'am and you spoke about challenges and implementation. I think ma'am is here. Give me 1 minute, ma'am. I'll come to you in a second. Typically, how much time do you think it'll take for implementation? Is this like a 6 months thing, or it's like a 3-year implementation? Because it's a long-term policy. I mean, they're talking about 2050, right?
I think Atul, it will take 3 years for us to actually see the most of it to be implemented. Many of the changes are doable quicker within 1 year, but most of them will take 3 years. So what happens is that wherever recruitments are involved, or restructuring is involved, or some kind of mergers of various things are involved, does take time. And as far as the curricula and like, for example, saying that 3 to 5 year age groups should be part of formal education, that can probably be done by next year, in my feeling, because many schools are already doing pre-nursery, nursery, even our toddler school is doing it. That part can be formalized. But things like even 4-year degrees could be done. Delhi University had already started thinking of it in the last 1 or 2 years, and Professor Dinesh Singh was earlier the Vice Chancellor. So I think that also may be possible in a year or so from now. 3 years, I would.
But the government is doing, I think it's in a hurry. That's the sense I have. They've changed the first, one of the recommendations was to change the name of the ministry from MHRD to the Ministry of Education.
That can be done. Yeah.
No, that's already happened. It happened
Yeah,
yesterday.
yeah, yeah.
That was
Yeah,
a
yeah.
quick one.
That's happened to
So Sandhya
education.
ma'am is with us now. So welcome, Sandhya ma'am. Would love to hear your thoughts on the new education policy. So if you could unmute and share your views for a minute or so, we'll appreciate it. Sandhya Devan?
I think she has
I think
some
we lost her
connectivity
again. She
issues.
has connectivity issues. Okay.
Yeah. Sir, I would like to add, Atulji, about the implementation. As Atray sir said, it's not going to take, I mean, at least 3 years are required, because for if students pass out in 3 years from say like 9, 10 and 11, so it has to be implemented from class 9 onwards.
Absolutely.
So it means children who are now in class 8, when they come to class 9, should opt in for the options, but they need to have had undergone the vocational subjects from class 6 onwards in schools. So maybe they need another 2 years for that. So if we calculate it that way, 3 years this side and at least 1 year of a vocational, so maybe from minimum 3 years are required for the implementation. I feel so. I mean, considering the special, especially this 9 to 12 slot, because it'll be little injustice to students who are in class 10 to just pass out in class 11. So as sir said, that curriculum can be updated in between, which has already been done rigorously. A lot of changes are taking place in class 7, 8, 9, 10, and we are rewriting our daily lesson plans. The new LOs have been created, comprehensive based education is taking place. A lot of things are happening already, but I think in a macro way it will at least take 2 to 3 years. Thank you, Atul sir. Over to
Fantastic. I
Sandhya
think
ma'am.
Sandhya ma'am is probably there. So let's give it one shot. Sandhya ma'am, over to you.
Yeah. Good evening, sir. Am I audible, sir?
You're audible, ma'am. Good evening. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. Good evening, sir. First of all, my heartfelt gratitude to Mr. Vivek and Mr. Atul for such an enriching and enlightening session. Many of our queries have been answered, and so you have given us a wonderful insight into this policy and also the components through which we are going to produce resilience-minded students. And maybe in the times to come, we would be able to transform this education. And then after this, I would like to thank Mrs. Anuja Sharma for providing me this opportunity to be in touch with you people all. So, sir, I think the national education policy envisions on an education system which is rooted in Indian ethos that constitutes directly to transforming India. We are going to transform India. Maybe it is related to education, and the students which are going to be with us in the upcoming years, they will really be transformed students. They will not be students which we have at present. This education policy is a very, you can say it is going to make our students reach the phenomenal heights, about the heights maybe which we were just thinking about in the days immemorial, or the in the past days. And I think that this policy envisages on a curriculum and pedagogy on which the institutions are going to develop our students. And the time is not very far when we will have one-to-one relation with all of you, and we will be able to tell you that we will be able to produce such good students, those who will be at the they will be no less than any foreigner. And maybe this policy is really, you can say, a benchmark for all the Indians. And I'm really pro for this policy, and we are really very thankful so that this policy has been implemented. And as Anuja ma'am was telling, I think it will take at least 3 years. 3 years time is required for the proper implementation of this policy. And thanks to all of you for this such an enriching session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandhya ma'am. There's a question from Poonam Khurana, which is linked to implementation, Vivek. And you might want to
Yes.
share your views on this.
I don't think, Poonam ma'am, that the current batch needs to be worried about it, and they should continue with their studies. And the current batch, especially which is already, now it is August, so I don't think anybody is going to disturb their studies. Yes, the entrance exams, etc., which will come at the end of the year, there may be changes there, as Atul also mentioned. So that will be for all, and there will be enough time. So not to worry, just carry on doing what you're doing, and as and when actual implementation happens, then we will implement, we will kind of adopt.
So we've pretty much
Time.
we are short of time, Vivek, and we've answered the questions. It's been a very, very exciting discussion. So I would also like to thank all of you. Before we close, I will request both Anuja ma'am and Vivek sir to give one sentence of your last thoughts. Anuja ma'am, just one sentence of last thoughts. You're muted.
I am really excited about this education policy because this is very close to my own competencies, which I developed as a student. That is learning by doing and experiencing the joy of doing the things. So I think I'm going to put my students to do it. And of course, my team of teachers who are also attending this webinar, we will just rock it and we are working on it. Thank you, Atul ji. Thank you, Vivek sir.
Thank you, Anuja
Thank you
ma'am.
very
Vivek,
much.
your last thoughts.
Yes, my last thoughts are that we should implement this policy and we should go forward with right earnest. And I think ultimately quality matters. So let's focus on quality in education.
So Vivek, it started raining here, and I'll again tease you by saying the weather got suddenly cold, and I feel like wearing a sweater.
Oh gosh.
Jokes apart, I'll ended up by saying I once read a quote. It was Mark Twain. He said that when you copy someone, you can only become a poor second. We were trying to copy the education of the West, and there's no way we can become number one in the world by copying someone else's education. It's time for us to go back to the Gurukul way, to go back to the way Takshila and Nalanda were formed. Hopefully, we'll rediscover the glorious past of India. Thank you very much, and look forward to being in touch. Have a great
Thank
day.
you.
Atul ji, thank you, Atray sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Jai Hind, and
Thanks
we'll
so
meet
much.
soon in Shalini after the COVID is over.
Absolutely, absolutely,
Thank
man.
you.
By the way,
Jai
before you
Hind,
go,
sir.
I have one news to share, and I'm very excited. The government of India comes up with Atal Incubation Awards, Atal Innovation Awards, where they invite universities and colleges to participate across India. So I'm excited that Shulini has been ranked 7th in the country in innovation, and we are second in North India. So I'm very excited today. The news just came out. The Vice President of India, Venkatai Naidu ji, just announced the awards. So just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, sir.
Thank you.
Congratulations, sir.
Thank you, Sandhya ma'am. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Last word, Atul sir.